The real reason my parents got divorced, a secret so dark they made me promise never to tell anyone. I was 16 when my parents sat me down in our living room and told me they were getting divorced. What I remember most wasn't the words they used or the careful way they explained that sometimes people grow apart. It was the look that passed between them. Not anger, not resentment, but something that looked almost like relief mixed with profound sadness. "It's not your fault, sweetheart," Mom said, reaching for my hand. "Sometimes adults make decisions that are hard to understand, but we both love you more than anything." Dad nodded, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. "We'll always be a family, Alex. Just a different kind of family." For months afterward, I accepted their explanation that they had grown apart and wanted different things. It was easier than questioning why two people who still clearly cared about each other, who never fought in front of me, who seemed to work together seamlessly as parents, would suddenly decide they couldn't be married anymore. The truth came out 3 years later, on the night before I left for college. I found Mom crying in the kitchen at 2 a.m., sitting at the table with a glass of wine and a stack of old photographs. She looked up when I entered, and for a moment, she looked like she was going to send me back to bed with some excuse about being sentimental. Instead, she patted the chair beside her. "Sit down, Alex. There's something your father and I should have told you a long time ago." She poured herself another glass of wine and took a long sip before continuing. "The divorce? It wasn't because we fell out of love. It was because we loved each other too much to let our marriage destroy an innocent person's life." I stared at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Mom was quiet for so long, I thought she'd changed her mind about telling me. Then she pulled out a photograph from the bottom of the stack, a picture I'd never seen before. It showed Dad and another woman, both in their early 20s, both smiling at the camera. The woman was holding a baby. "Your father had an affair when we'd been married for 2 years," Mom said quietly. "It lasted about 6 months. When it ended, the woman, her name was Lisa, discovered she was pregnant." My stomach dropped. "Dad has another kid?" "Had," Mom corrected gently. "Lisa died in a car accident when the baby was 18 months old. She'd never told the father's identity to anyone except your dad. So when she died, your father was faced with a choice: let his daughter go into the foster system or step forward and claim her." I stared at the photograph, trying to process what she was telling me. "He chose to claim her? We chose," Mom emphasized, "because that's what you do when an innocent child needs help." "But Alex, this was 1999. Your father was a high school principal. I was a teacher. We lived in a small, conservative town where reputation mattered for our careers. If people found out that your father had an affair and a secret child, it would have destroyed both our professional lives." She pulled out another photograph, this one showing a little girl, maybe 3 years old, with Dad's unmistakable green eyes and stubborn chin. "Meet your sister, Sophia. Your father has been supporting her financially and visiting her every other weekend for the past 15 years. She lives with Lisa's sister, Maya, who adopted her officially but couldn't afford to raise her without help." The room felt like it was spinning. "I have a sister? For 15 years, I've had a sister? Your father wanted to tell you so many times," Mom said, tears streaming down her face. "But we were terrified. Terrified that if the truth came out, we'd lose our jobs, our house, our ability to help Sophia financially. And terrified that you'd hate your father for what he'd done." "But why the divorce?" I asked, still struggling to understand. Mom smiled sadly. "Because Maya, Sophia's adoptive mother, developed lupus 3 years ago. She needed more help, more support. Your father wanted to be more present in Sophia's life. He wanted to help care for Maya, wanted to make up for 15 years of being a part-time parent. But he couldn't do that while maintaining the fiction that he was a faithful family man." She pulled out a final photograph, this one recent, showing Dad teaching a teenage girl how to change a tire. The girl was laughing, her head thrown back with joy, and Dad was smiling with the same pride I'd seen when he taught me to drive. "The divorce gave your father the freedom to be honest about his relationship with Sophia without destroying our reputations. People could assume he was dating Maya, or that he was just a kind man helping out a single mother and her daughter. The scandal would be minimal, and Sophia could finally have her father be a real part of her life. But what about you? I asked. You gave up your marriage so dad could help his other daughter? Mom reached over and took my hand. Alex, I gave up the legal status of being married. I didn't give up love or friendship or partnership. Your father and I talk every day. We still spend holidays together. We still make decisions about you together. We just don't live in the same house anymore, which means Sophia can come stay with him without anyone asking uncomfortable questions. The implications hit me like a tidal wave. You sacrificed your marriage to protect a child you didn't even create? I sacrificed the public appearance of my marriage to protect a child who needed help, Mom corrected, and to protect your father from the consequences of a mistake he made 20 years ago, and to protect you from having your father's reputation destroyed while you were still in high school. She stood up and poured herself another glass of wine, then sat back down. Alex, there's more. Sophia doesn't know your father is her biological parent. Maya thought it would be too confusing for her growing up. As far as Sophia knows, David is just Maya's incredibly generous friend who helps with money and spends time with her because he cares. She thinks of him as a father figure, but not as her actual father. Does she know about me? She knows David has a son he's very proud of. She's seen pictures of you, heard stories about your accomplishments. She's always wanted to meet you, but we weren't sure how to explain the connection without revealing the whole truth. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to reconcile this new reality with everything I thought I knew about my family. My parents weren't divorced because they'd grown apart. They were divorced because they'd loved each other enough to sacrifice their own happiness for the well-being of a child who wasn't even technically part of our family. Why are you telling me this now? I asked finally. Mom smiled through her tears. Because Maya is getting sicker, and your father wants to petition for legal guardianship of Sophia when she turns 18 next year. Because you're going to college, and you're old enough to understand complex adult decisions. And because, she paused, because Sophia has been asking more questions about David lately. She's not stupid. She can see that he cares about her in a way that goes beyond friendship with Maya. She deserves to know the truth. She deserves to know she has a father who has loved her and supported her for her entire life, even if he couldn't claim her publicly. And she deserves to know she has a brother who... Mom looked at me hopefully. Who might want to meet her? 3 weeks later, I found myself sitting in a restaurant in the next town over, nervously waiting to meet my sister for the first time. Dad had arranged it as a casual lunch. Just him, his friend Maya's daughter, and his son home from college. When Sophia walked in, I nearly gasped. She looked like a feminine version of Dad, with the same green eyes, the same way of tilting her head when she was thinking, the same unconscious habit of running her hand through her hair when she was nervous. You must be Alex, she said, extending her hand with a shy smile. David talks about you all the time. I feel like I already know you. Over lunch, I watched her interact with Dad and saw 15 years of genuine affection and respect. She teased him about his terrible jokes, asked his advice about college applications, and lit up when he praised her artwork. It was clear that whatever the technical details of their relationship, they loved each other deeply. David, she said as we were finishing dessert, can I ask you something I've always wondered about? Dad tensed slightly. Of course. Why do you care so much about me and Maya? I mean, you've been basically supporting us for years, and you spend more time with me than some of my friends' actual fathers spend with them. It's not that I'm complaining, she added quickly. I've always wondered what made you decide to be so involved in our lives. Dad glanced at me, and I saw years of carefully hidden emotion in his eyes. Because, he said quietly, some people come into your life and become family, even if they're not technically related to you. You and Maya became family to me a long time ago, and family takes care of each other. Sophia smiled, but I could see she wasn't entirely satisfied with the answer. After lunch, as we walked to our cars, she pulled me aside. Alex, can I ask you something? And will you promise to be honest with me? I nodded, my heart pounding. Is David my father? The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. I looked at this girl. this young woman, who had Dad's eyes and his stubborn chin and his way of pursuing truth, even when it was uncomfortable. What would you do if he was? I asked instead of answering. She was quiet for a long moment. I'd probably cry, she said finally. But not because I was upset, because it would mean that my dad, my real dad, has been here all along, loving me and taking care of me, even though he couldn't claim me. It would mean I haven't been missing out on having a father because I've had one this whole time. I looked over at Dad, who was talking quietly with Maya by her car, probably discussing Sophia's college applications or Maya's latest doctor's appointment. Then I looked back at Sophia, who was watching me with hope and fear and desperate love in her eyes. Yeah, I said softly. He's your father. And Mom and Dad got divorced so he could be a better parent to you without destroying his reputation or ability to help your family financially. Sophia started crying then, but she was smiling at the same time. I knew it, she whispered. I've known it for years, but I was afraid to ask because I thought maybe he didn't want me to know. He's wanted to tell you since the day you were born, I said, but protecting you was more important than claiming you. That night, our fractured family sat down together, Dad, Mom, Maya, Sophia, and me, and finally told the whole truth. There were tears, explanations, apologies, and forgiveness. Maya apologized for keeping Sophia from knowing her father's identity. Dad apologized for the affair that started everything. Mom apologized for the years of secrecy. Sophia apologized for nothing because she was the innocent party in all of this, the child who had been protected and loved even when she didn't know it. 2 years later, Sophia officially took Dad's last name. Maya, whose health had stabilized, moved closer to our town so Sophia could spend equal time with both families. The divorce remained in place. It was easier than trying to explain the complexities to our small town. But our family had never been stronger. I learned that sometimes love looks like sacrifice, that sometimes protecting someone means making choices that look wrong from the outside, and that family isn't always defined by law or convention, but by the people who show up for each other when it matters most. The secret my parents made me promise never to tell wasn't dark because it was evil. It was dark because it required them to live a lie in order to protect the people they loved. But in the end, love won. It always does, if you're patient enough to let it work through the complications of real life. Sophia is graduating from college next month with a degree in social work. She wants to help kids in foster care, kids who need someone to fight for them the way our parents fought for her. At her graduation, she'll be cheered on by two mothers and one father who sacrificed their conventional happiness to make sure she had the love and support she needed to become the remarkable woman she is today. That's the real story of why my parents got divorced. Not because love failed, but because love was so strong, it was willing to break every rule to keep a child safe.